All right, we are live. Excelente. So hello everyone. It's me, Robert, and it's him also, Robert. And so we have our big national story. We're going to open with that because we're going to be joined in a minute by our technologically impaired colleague from Tshwane, from Pretoria, in just a moment. But the main obvious story there, as you can tell by the thumbnail, with Cilliers Brink and his 1,000-yard stare, having sacrificed a parliamentary position for a very rapidly collapsed municipal. Oh, but
yeah, I think his salary was cut like 75%.
Oh, there we go. Mark Surgeon is there. Hello, Mr.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi, Mark. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Welcome to the show. Crystal clear.
Hello.
Thank you. I must apologize for not showing my face this time around. I'm on load shedding and therefore using mobile data, which means if I switch on my video, I'm going to be having. I think no, Mark is well placed to explain. He is still connected. I desperately hope this loading signal is not going to be permanent. But Mark is a councillor for the Vryheidsfront Plus. I can't remember what his ward number is, but he's up there in Tshwane, fighting the fight for against the forces of charterism. And who better to fill us in on what's going on in the council than a councillor? So, Mark, what's been happening?
Well, let's say the past week has
my signal that bad?
No,
wait, no, there we
maybe the best thing is just all go on to voice only mode.
Yeah, let's try that.
All right. Can you hear me loud and clear, Rob?
Oh yeah, crystal.
All right. I think there is some delay in the messaging here, but I'll try and give my best recap of probably the most turbulent week in my political career so far. So on Tuesday, a meeting happened to elect the new mayor of the city of Tshwane. Of course, our candidate as the multi-party coalition was Cilliers Brink, who was a member of parliament who was recalled by the DA to come to Tshwane and serve as their candidate here. And we had heard rumors as the coalition that essentially the Speaker of the House, Marunwa Makrawela, had been approached by the ANC and the EFF and offered a mayoral position. Now, this is quite an interesting predicament, as this seems to be the case in places where the coalition rules and has ruled, where small one-party seat parties are approached and offered high-powered positions which they couldn't possibly refuse, and it undermines the multi-party coalition. So that happened. We nominated Cilliers Brink, and shortly after that, a one-member party, a one-seat party, insignificant, I don't even remember what they're called, nominated Dr. Marunwa Makrawela to be the mayor. And then an IEC election took place, and the multi-party coalition received 101 votes, and the ANC EFF coalition received 112 votes, which means 7 or 8 councillors from the coalition voted against the coalition candidate. So immediately after that, there's been a very intense process of trying to find and discipline those members, which is well within the right of a political party to do. As a political party, one can instruct one's councillors, one's representatives to vote along party ideological lines. And if a member does not do that, that member, as per all the relevant laws and regulations, is or can face disciplinary action by that party. So, despite what the EFF has been claiming today, what has been happening since Tuesday is a disciplinary process, and it's completely legal. So that involves the first stage, which is a polygraph test on all members of the coalition. I had my polygraph test today, and I'm convinced I failed it.
Did you not remember that special trick where you clench your anus and it sort of? I mean, the thing is, the easiness of tricking these things is so farcical. I mean, you have to have a sort of superstitious belief in the efficacy of these machines to be the kind of person who'd fall for it. Really?
Well, the polygraph test isn't the be all and end all. It's simply a starting point. So the idea is everyone goes for polygraph test, and then it's not treated as gospel. The result, if I fail the polygraph test, I'm not going to be thrown out. But it's a starting point to try and find some indication as to who is responsible. Now, we already have our own ideas, and the polygraph test is just a tool that we're using to try and confirm our suspicions. Funny enough, with my polygraph test, I had to redo it 4 times, which took me 2 hours, because a part of the process is you are told by the interviewer, the specialist, to tell a certain lie. So you're asked certain questions, and then you answer those questions truthfully, and then you're told to lie about the results. So instead of saying yes, you would say no. When the test
they didn't ask you anything intimate, did they, Mark?
I was terrified they would, but they didn't, thank goodness. But anyway, we had to redo it 4 times because I was not lying honestly enough. So when I was supposed to say no, when I was supposed to lie and say no, the polygraph results weren't reflecting a lie. So we had some challenge trying to get me to lie convincingly enough, which I found quite amusing.
Gosh, she must be the most honest politician in the country then.
Oh dear. No. You've just got to sort of tell them, you've got magic powers. Whenever you say it's true, it is. The machine's infallible.
Yeah, but it's just I think there's no such thing as an honest politician. We're all very good liars. No, I'm kidding, of course. Not Freedom Front Plus councillors, to say the least. But it has been a productive day.
No.
Yeah, how did the EFF's disruptions today with the polygraph tests impact the proceedings?
So the Freedom Front Plus, we had arranged for a company to conduct our polygraph tests, and the DA used the same company. Where Action SA decided to employ their own company to do it. So we were at different venues. Where the Freedom Front Plus is at an undisclosed location, the Action SA was at a venue in Centurion, and there is an Action SA councillor. Oh, perhaps I shouldn't say this. There is an alleged Action SA councillor who is leaking information, and so it would make sense that the information regarding to their polygraph test was leaked to the EFF, and the EFF stormed the building and stole the polygraph equipment, which is a robbery. They essentially entered the premises illegally and robbed them of their belongings. So more criminal charges will be added to the already.
No one thought to deploy firearm defense at all. No one was concealed carrying. Nothing.
Don't give me wishful thinking, Robert.
Oh, well, we can all live in hope. But I mean, I saw the little videos. I mean, they seem fairly low energy. I'm surprised they managed to I'm surprised that they actually managed to steal anything, because they look fairly lethargic in those little clips.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's quite a shocker that we sit here and we have this thing going on, because I mean, okay, everyone knows that the EFF is a fairly rowdy bunch of bastards, but these kind of breaches of protocol and so on that we've been seeing in the last couple of months. I mean, like the disruption of the State of the Nation address, this kind of behavior. It does seem like a bit of a step up, a bit of an acceleration for what we've been seeing in the past. I mean, what is it like in your area? Because I remember, I mean, like I have a friend who works in Nelson Mandela Bay, and she was talking about the nature of the coalitions they deal with over there, the death threats, the intimidation, the constant childish shenanigans. I mean, I wonder. I mean, like how intense is the day-to-day interactions with FF there at the moment, or are they just sort of like a background nuisance?
No, it's quite intense. For a while, they were running around Tshwane House bullying staff and intimidating other politicians. But, when you find one of them one-on-one, they can be quite pleasant. Obviously, when they're alone, they aren't a threat. They're meek.
Didn't the
But as a
EFF try
pack-
and
I know the
compete?
type. I know the type. There's that whole thing where they're, come on, chief, we're just playing. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but on their own, behind closed doors, they're more than happy to have a chat with us. But I don't fall for that sort of thing. To me, the politicians that indulge in that sort of joking and friendliness behind closed doors when we're not in a council meeting, they're a bit of a sellout. I can't take you seriously if you're, let's say, for example, a DA councillor and to the public, to your constituents, and in a council meeting, it's all aggression and anger towards the EFF. But then the moment the meeting is closed, you walk over there and give them a big hug and how are you and a chat. To me, that's disingenuous, dishonest, and a bit of a sellout. And that's very common.
Yeah,
I see that with.
it almost seems to me like that kind of two-faced behavior that you get from these people, where they want to be liked as individuals and feared as a group, strikes me as the kind of thing that makes for an easy target for corruption. And I'm surprised that you don't hear more about EFF councillors being bought off to vote for the opposite side.
Yeah, well, I guess the leaders of the opposite side are more ethical, even though their councillors might be friendly. I don't think it's the DA would dream of offering the EFF a bribe, but I might be wrong on that. Yes.
Last week I just wanted to ask this previously. Before the vote in council, wasn't there also some sort of attempted insurrection by the EFF to remove members of Randall Williams' cabinet?
Yeah. So this is pretty much the grand plan of Morunwa Makroela's ascension to the throne, and I say that because he's had himself anointed since taking office. By the way, this is the beginning stages of the coup. So Randall Williams resigns. He alters his resignation to the end of the month, the end of February, rather than mid-February, which he's entitled to do. The speaker disagrees, gets a legal opinion, and pretty much accepts only the first letter of resignation and enforces his legal opinion on the city. Immediately after that, the EFF violently removed members of the Mako from their office. They also attacked city staff who were simply going about their business, staff that have no relation to any political office. They violently assaulted the chief of staff in the mayor's office. and a few people got hurt. So unacceptable behavior. That was the start of it. So they removed political office bearers from their positions forcefully. They removed, not only did they remove members of the Mayoral Committee, they removed chairpersons from their positions. Now, the committee chairpersons are not a part of the Mayoral Committee. They're elected by council, and they have not been unelected by council. They're not affected by a mayor's resignation. So, they had to be evacuated from Tshwane House rather dramatically. So that was an attempt at sort of insurrection, and there's been essentially no political oversight since that point because of the situation at Tshwane House, the headquarters of the city of Tshwane. So that was week number one, and then after Randall Williams' resignation, and then the speaker, Dr. Marunwa Makuela's coup came, where he seized the city, and funny enough, he seems rather attached to power. Usually, the first order of business as a mayor is to appoint his mayoral committee. I think when we appointed Randall Williams at the beginning of our term, the mayoral committee was already decided and was final at that instant. However, Dr. Speaker, Dr. Mayor, he has not yet appointed his mayoral committee, and the informants we have in Tshwane House tell us that a little bit of a squabble has developed between the EFF and the ANC. The EFF demand 4 mayoral positions, and the ANC also demand 4. But there's only so many to go around. So, I mean, the ANC demand 5, and they want to give the EFF 3, but the EFF are not accepting that. So, a bit of an unholy alliance at the moment. And without saying too much, without saying anything, actually, I'm going to tell you, just have a look at the headlines tomorrow. There's something interesting coming, and I'm going to leave it at that. This might just be the shortest mayoral term in the history of South Africa.
Okay.
Might just.
Okay, because you are not authorized to disclose. Oh, really?
There's some of it has been made public.
Well, my question here, just for clarification for anyone who's not okay.
There was a bit of a delay, Robert, but please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll have a scoop around, but Sherbet. Sorry. I don't know how bad the delay is, but I hope it's on that.
Sorry, Rob. I think you're breaking up a bit.
What I just wanted to know was, with Randall Williams, what is it that actually?
You should try again, Robert. I think it's working now.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. I seem to be running out of airtime. I need to quickly top up. So hold on. But what I was going to ask is basically, what was the cause of Randall Williams' resignation?
The outcome of the audit general report seems to be the primary reason.
Yeah.
I think the DA was looking to make an example. They obviously want to prove to their voters that they take the audit general report seriously and that heads will roll. And I think it was an executive decision by the DA Federal Council to ask Randall Williams to resign his position. Now, the 100% of the problems come from that.
So they took a
decision.
gamble on the reliability of their coalition partners and their own members that backfired.
Yeah, but also their decision to have him resign with immediate effect was incredibly reckless and caused, well, essentially 100% of the drama we're facing today. However, yeah, the DA were looking. Well, Helen was looking for a scapegoat, I believe, and Randall was the candidate. I believe it was also Helen Zille's decision to parachute Celia Brinken from Parliament, which also ended up being a contentious decision. So DA Federal Council causing a few issues, but I don't think this would have stopped the plans for a hostile takeover anyway. I believe the discussions were probably taking place before Randall Williams decided to resign, or was asked to resign.
Well, we've spoken a number of
Yeah.
times, and I know that you've mentioned for a few months now that there's been plots and scheming from the EFF and ANC to try and retake Tshwane, because it's part of that broader strategy in Gauteng, where they want to, obviously they've taken control of Johannesburg, and looks like they're going to take control fully of Ekurhuleni. So that was really just part of the broader strategy for the entire province.
Absolutely. Since the end of the election in 2021, they have been scheming 24 hours a day on how to undermine the multi-party coalition. And it's interesting, people say that it's a copy and paste strategy from Johannesburg, but actually the problems the coalition faces are completely different in all three metros where we govern or governed. Johannesburg's problems are different to Ekurhuleni's problems, and Ekurhuleni's problems are different to Tshwane's problems. Our Tshwane problem is pretty much 100% internal, whereas Johannesburg struggles with an unequal balance of power within the coalition, and Ekurhuleni struggles with a minority government. So we all have our own unique challenges, but I would say give us some time. Yeah, we are facing 100% relentless attack from the ANC, but as we go along, we're also learning how to counter it more effectively. For example, this whole saga we've had now has kind of forced a bit of unity between the DA, Action SA, and the VF Plus. We have a common enemy, which I think was needed for the time being to unite the coalition even more. So we'll definitely come back stronger from this and more resilient to attempts by the ANC to rid us of our position.
And compared with the other municipality or other metros, you are in a strong position there in Tshwane, because apart from Cape Town, it's probably the second safest metro for the multi-party coalition in the country, because once you're able to expel those coalition members that betrayed the alliance, then you should have at least a working majority, a solid working majority there. But how do you think this is going to impact votes when it comes to the next, the 2024 elections, when in Tshwane, as well as the 2026 local elections in the city?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and it's not an easy answer. There's so many different variables, but what I can tell you is, and I'm not saying this because I am a Freedom Front Plus councillor, but the Freedom Front Plus has come out looking very good from this whole saga. So what we can expect to see is some sort of Freedom Front Plus growth. Now, it might be massive growth or just marginal, but the residents are watching, and people are noticing that throughout all of this, there's one party which is beyond question. Our loyalty and integrity has stood and is undoubted at this point, and that's the Freedom Front Plus. So I expect the DA will continue to slide slightly in the votes. Action SA will grow despite all the problems they've had in the townships. And I suspect a boycott of ANC voters, as we saw in 2021, especially if load shedding is still around. So despite the drama, I think it's still looking good for the coalition. We are on a growing trend. But what we need to focus on doing is, as a coalition, we need to get together and start pretty much the Freedom Front Plus needs to 100% mobilize all of its supporters within the city. Action SA needs to mobilize all of their supporters, and the DA needs to mobilize all of theirs. I think we're not tapping into the full potential of our voter base, all of our voter bases. And as a coalition, that can be our main focus going into 2024, is mobilizing each one of our constituencies so that the coalition gets maximum growth. And then we can really build a solid foundation, a real unthreatenable coalition, as it were. We can rival Cape Town in that regard.
I've got a question for you, but I've just checked that there's a question.
As I see it,
yeah.
Well, before we hit the questions in the sidebar, one of the things that I wanted to know was, how do you see EFF support in the city at the moment? Because I imagine a lot of ANC support that gets lost into transfer to either them or some smaller party, or even IFP support. But I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, the EFF lost 2 seats in the last election. I think they went from 21. No, they went from 31 down to 29, I think. So a bit of a negative trend for them, and that's due mostly to a stronger ANC. The ANC's got their act together a bit in Tshwane since, and a disenfranchised voter. I mean, the EFF's initial claim to fame was their radicalism, but I think as time goes on, their initial voters have become rather perhaps disappointed with the lack of progress made by the EFF, and it's slipping away. I think perhaps that also has to do with the younger voter not coming out in the townships and voting. So yeah, they're not doing too well, and perhaps it even has something to do with the emergence of Action SA as well, where the youth in the townships who would initially have turned from the ANC to the EFF have now got a second option, which is a more moderate party. So perhaps more moderate voters who voted for the EFF out of lack of options have now discovered a new party that they can support. So I hope that answers your question.
I think also the other thing is as well over there is, like, if you can't consolidate elderly support, then you're in trouble, because those are the people who will reliably come out and vote for you. If you're looking after your older voters, they're fairly loyal. But as you say, with younger voters, they're kind of fickle. They're often lazy to come to the polls. And particularly in local elections, there's also residence requirements that are not as that are stricter than in national elections. So it's kind of a big issue for a party that relies so much on youth vote. But results. One of the things I would think about, and I mean, there was something that was shared by Athol Trollop today on Twitter. So he pushed this interview where they were discussing on, I think it was EWN. They were discussing the possibility of a Paul Mashatile takeover in the ANC, and with it an EFF sort of ascendancy to national government. Now that would certainly change. That would certainly change their prospects at locals as well, wouldn't it?
Well, when a party comes to power, the opportunities for the comrades to eat grows. So absolutely, opportunists will always flock to a ruling party.
Mark, I've got a question from the side chat here. Maybe you'd like to answer it. Sideliner Opinions has asked, why must party members always vote with the party? Why not let the party leaders alone vote on behalf of members? And surely democracy demands that members should vote in line with their convictions.
Well, it's the member of the party's choice. No one always. The question is, why must party members always vote with the party? Well, they don't have to always vote with the party, and if they wish to be a member, then that's someone who's committed themselves to being a member of a political party is someone who's usually more dedicated to that cause and will most likely vote for the party. But it's democracy. You can vote for whoever you want to vote, and you can change your vote. Don't always have to vote for the same guy. Yeah. Surely
Yeah. On the
democracy
other
demands
hand,
that.
there's consequences for your career if you decide to vote on your own. I mean, even in a first past the post system like in the United Kingdom, you've got party whips that can basically tell people where to go, and there's a rebellion going on. You've got parties nowadays are very well-oiled machines. You've got professional politicians who are worried about their position 5-10 years down the line if they do something wrong now. I mean, I remember when I was at UCT, and I had a friend who was in the ANC Youth League, and he was petrified to come out as a supporter of Ramaphosa back when the leadership competition was up and running between him and Jacob Zuma, because he didn't know where the lines would be drawn, and he didn't want to take a gamble. And I sort of said, well, if you take a stance now based on your conscience, then because he was a Ramaphosa supporter, and I was generally at the time in thinking that one would be better than the other. Ha ha ha, silly me. But the thing is, I mean, like most people, even if they're really young starting out and haven't got as much to risk, you still worry about what the consequences of these votes are. And we have this party list proportional representation system. You can just get ripped off the party list anytime. So parties have an enormous control over how things turn out. I mean, like I had the more I hear about how things are run in the DA, the less I the less I sort of think that they are substantially different in that respect. I mean, you hear from insiders how they seldom have a chance to actually read what they're about to vote on, which, I mean, okay, that's not spectacularly unusual. I mean, it's common practice in the United States. But, I mean, it causes problems. I mean, in one very famous case with what's her name, Debbie Schaefer. I accidentally called her Andy Weiner on Twitter the other day.
Oh dear.
So I mean, Debbie Schaefer, what she did is she passed this really hairy bill on Western Cape education stuff, like LGBTQ stuff and like mandatory CRT re-education courses. And I estimated the reason for that is that she's going to move into the UK civil service. So she was doing it to line her CV. But when I spoke to someone on the inside, they said, no, you don't get it. She didn't read the document. How do you stamped your name on this policy and you didn't read anything that was inside it? I mean, really? I mean,
yeah, I think they're definitely throwing the illusion that they're more competent in some regards. I mean, it's that's why you need these multi-party coalitions in place, because it puts some accountability on the governing party, which controls some of these ministries, to actually take their job seriously. Because if you allow extremist content to just go past you like that, then obviously, as we saw in Fisher, it has some very serious consequences.
Yeah, I mean, like what you're talking about now is something. It was a fun little article from The Economist a couple of years ago. They were talking about something called the clown ceiling. So this is something that they said affected sort of far right parties in Europe. I mean, but remember, Europe is still a place where being civilized and mature has some value in it, unlike over here. So. But what they were talking about is that you have these characters who will come out occasionally in the far right parties. Like they'll start out being full of intellectuals, very organized, whatever, and then over time they get taken over by more eccentric people who are a little bit less disciplined as their numbers grow, and because they're on the right, they're much more sensitive to scandal. And so someone will say something off, and they'll get clapped for it in the media. And so
Yeah, that
this
was
has happened
definitely
over
the
and
case with AFD, wasn't it?
over again into the European countries, and they call this the clown ceiling. So, like, there's a ceiling at which clowns in the party will bash their head on at some point. And I think the difference in South Africa is, yeah, I mean, the only parties that really the only sort of sectors of the population. I mean, the rest of the country sort of is only very tolerant of.
Oh dear, it seems like we've lost Rob. Hopefully he can rejoin us once he's recharged his airtime. I see Sideliner Opinions has asked another question. Some parties had their members undergo lie detector tests to determine who did not toe the line. What question mark? I think also that the big difference here is that, especially with councils, half the seats are wards and then half the seats are elected on a proportional basis. And just seeing half the seats are elected on a proportional basis. So for those proportional councillors, they are really they're there to serve the party. They weren't elected as individuals; they were elected as the party itself. And there's also a massive difference being bribed for your vote and voting on your conscience. And there is a big concern, especially with some of these councillors from the coalition, that they weren't actually voting with their conscience. There were allegations of bribery that have taken place there. So clearly, if that is taking place, that needs to be rooted out to ensure that the coalition can maintain its integrity. Rob, are you back?
I am back. That was that was embarrassing and frustrating and stupid, but yes, we are back. I kind of have a question here. I mean, look, obviously, Mark, there's some stuff that you can't. I know there.
I don't know if Robert is 100%.
Lines that you can't cross in terms of getting certain information, but the irregularity talked about. You say the previous fellow he went. Bloody hell! I'll have to wait until 8 o'clock.
Oh dear. The other Robert. Perhaps we should carry things. I was on another call. I must apologize to the listeners. I received a call from my caucus leader, which I couldn't miss, and so I had to step away from the discussion. But I'm back now.
Yeah, so no, I was just answering another question from Sideline Opinions. He was he seemed quite concerned about the fact that the multi-party coalition was using lie detector tests to identify who was not towing the party line. Would you like to give your opinion on that?
Yeah, I rarely share the same opinion as Michael Beaumont on this one, where when you decide to become a councillor for a political party, you enter into a contract with that party. And the contract is that you follow the party's instruction with regards to voting in council. Now, that isn't always the case. It's only really on sort of major issues such as this one, such as electing the mayor or the speaker or other high-powered political positions. We've had some cases where members of the coalition haven't voted along coalition lines, and we've dealt with that in its stride. The Freedom Front Plus has voted against the coalition in the past. I think it was in 2019, or was it 2020? We voted against the budget that the DA at that time had put forward. So there are times when one can stray from party lines or coalition lines, but the party does have the right to discipline you if it has made an instruction, such as the one made today. That's just unfortunately the case. It's the same as in the corporate industry. If you sign a contract with your employer and then you violate that contract, and cause major harm to your organization or business, as a result, that business has the right to take disciplinary action against you.
And as I said, especially in the case of the Freedom Front and Action SA, these are parties that don't have any ward councillors in their city. All the councillors are proportional councillors. So they weren't elected as individuals, they were elected as party. They were allocated. The party was voted for, and then the party allocated the positions to them. I would say there's almost a bit of a difference when it comes to ward councillors, because when you elect ward councillors, you are in a sense voting for that individual. So maybe there should be some sort of arrangement where ward councillors get a bit more autonomy to vote along with their conscience. But certainly for proportional councillors, it needs to be constrained further, because they haven't been elected to express their individual views. The party's been elected to implement its policies.
Well, that's a good observation, and I generally find ward councillors toe the line, but they do have an obligation to their constituents, and so I think some leeway is given. However, when it comes to really important votes, then the tolerance isn't always there.
I have, I think, found a reasonable signal position. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes through the show. Like it's working for now.
Okay, because look, the Wi-Fi router will come on again in like 20 minutes. But what I wanted to ask, while we still have you here, Mark, is the conditions surrounding the irregularities in the budget report. I mean, how far can you go into that? How well do you know it?
Well, we've studied it somewhat. Well, not more than somewhat, shall I say. We've really studied it, and not all of it is as it seems. So, when the Audit General report says 11 billion rand in irregular expenditure, that number is actually an accumulation of irregular expenditure over the past several years. So it's not just for our term of office. And irregular expenditure isn't necessarily corruption. In fact, probably 99% of this irregular expenditure isn't corruption. It's unauthorized expenditure that was not authorized through a council sitting. So let's say there's a COVID outbreak and the city needs to allocate emergency funding to procure protection equipment and so on and so forth. This all has to happen before a council meeting can take place, where an adjustment budget can be passed. And so that then becomes irregular expenditure. Or let's say,
so how deeply did so here's a question: how deeply did the council actually go in dissecting what was the irregular expenditure and so on? Because it strikes me that like the way you put it, sort of saying that Williams was made into a scapegoat. I mean, do you think that there's that he should have perhaps been given a bit more chance to survive scrutiny by going through things a bit more finely, or what do you think?
Yeah, and we had started that process. The MACO had, and several members of the mayoral committee had devoted sleepless nights to perusing that report and putting together an extremely comprehensive plan on how to rectify the Audit General report. And I think stage one of that plan is tackling the unauthorized expenditure. And I think the next council meeting, which we still haven't had yet since Williams has resigned, was going to clear a large percentage of that irregular expenditure by approving it through council. So the plan was already in motion, and the plan, which was still is extremely comprehensive, developed by mainly Grandi Tienerson of the Freedom Front Plus and Peter Sutton of the DA, was a clear path, a clear benchmark for the coalition to follow to set things straight. And so, yeah, it was disappointing to see see Randall ousted before he kind of had the chance to guide the city to a sort of better picture.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So they have an actual plan that would clear most of this irregular expenditure. Say, okay, this was allocated in this way. This is where it comes from, and the vast majority of it is completely licit and legal, and just has things from previous budget cycles that's been carried over due to bad accounting. So that's the majority of it. And then how did it end up being that, despite the fact that there was a plan on the table, that he was pushing? Because that is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, like I said, it's very disappointing that the Democratic Alliance Federal Council made a rash decision without even consulting the mayoral committee of the city of Tshwane and the coalition partners. And this actually goes against the coalition agreement that we had signed. And I have it here on my desktop, but I don't think I need to open it to quote it. Pretty much the rules we set out for ourselves are as follows. Before a major decision can be taken about the position of a mayor or any of the mayoral committee or the speaker from the coalition, there needs to be a coalition management decision or a meeting where a decision is made on that. So yeah, very disappointing that they made that decision without consulting us, and then that they made that decision so rashly without actually consulting their own people.
Stunning. I mean,
Yeah.
the dumb thing about this is that the principal consultation, it doesn't need to be written down. It's like an obvious part of any kind of organized human behavior. So whether you're running like, an NGO or corporation or like a little church committee, everyone knows that you got to consult. So
Yes.
This strikes me as just completely losing touch.
Yeah, and if we're going to point the finger, I mean, I have to point the finger at Helen Ziller, who is attempting to play chess or grand strategy with the multi-party coalition from the DA side, and has meddled in the affairs of the three coalitions in Gauteng, and especially here in Pretoria, where her direct meddling, because it was her decisions that had led to this, has resulted in the situation. So I'm afraid John Steenhuisen needs to step up to the plate and tell Zilla to, as Dr. Groenewald said, stay in her lane.
Yeah, but I mean, Steenhuisen doesn't have the stones for acting on his own speed, man. So, but
that's a nice maybe
is there any sort of more
crossover
detail
point.
you can give on how precisely? Yeah, how precisely it in.
Rob, yeah, maybe that might be a good, because I know you wanted to talk about the DA national leadership election taking place. So maybe that's a good point to move on to.
Yeah, look, the way I see it, I don't see any sort of major competition. I mean, we saw what's his name? Sure, but my brain's skipping here. Hold on.
Sorry, Msimanga?
The guy who got sanctioned. Yeah, no, not Msimanga. The other fellow, the one who got bollocked for faking his V. What's his name? He threw his hat into the ring recently. It was hilarious. Sure, there we go. Madikizela. Bongi Nkosi Madikizela. I have no idea why he thinks he can make money.
Who is that even?
But I mean, for me, yeah, no, I mean, he was seen as a big up and coming guy because he was part of the crowd that sort of stepped up during the whole Musi Maimane blackwashing era. But he wasn't. He actually seemed to believe in the whole non-racialist vibe. and so he was looking really good. And then it turned out that I should preface this with allegedly and to the best of my recollection, seemed to have faked his credentials, which did not look good. So, I mean, because I think, look, the DA is carrying John Steenhuisen's low level of credentials quite well, especially considering that for decades they made big bones out of the fact that we've all got degrees and the ANC don't, and Jacob Zuma's got grade 5 and so on. And so they all went and bought degrees in those parties from UNISA and wherever. And so now it's like their whole thing is to turn the tables. And yeah, Madikizela, it really embarrassed them for a while, and he's still trying to go for leadership. That's not going to work out.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but,
John
I mean-
Steenhuisen is just pulling ahead completely in the election. I mean, I just saw the latest updates is that he's received the backing of the provincial leadership of the Free State, Eastern Cape, KZN, I think the Western Cape as well. He's got Solly Masimanga's support now, and the provincial chairperson in the Gauteng support thread now. So he's wrapping up all the endorsements for re-election. I don't think really anyone can really challenge him at this point.
No, that's true. I mean, look, but the thing is, no one. There are very few people who really want his job badly enough and are smart enough to know that they shouldn't want it. So the thing is, I mean, and additionally, he's a relatively charming, sort of harmless, charming chap in a harmless sort of way, whereas his main
Ask Michael
competition
Beaumont's
is
wife.
Mpho Palatse. Oh, jeez. Michael Beaumont's ex-wife, I think, would be the current one. Seems poached yet. Hopefully for Michael Beaumont, but the Mpho Palatse, she doesn't clearly doesn't have what it takes.
I think we're losing you again, Rob.
For national level leadership, and she doesn't come across as very bright. Oh, come on! Wait, two connecting.
Gentlemen.
Who's connecting to my hotspot?
The culprit. Gentlemen, both Robert and Robert, while your electricity might be coming on, Mr. Daigen, mine is going off. So I think I need to vacate the call and shut down my computer.
Okay, well, it's been great having you.
Thank you. Please have me again when the signal is pure and clean, and we can have a proper uninterrupted discussion. That was great fun.
Yeah, when it's not stage 5 load shedding. Look, hopefully, maybe look in a couple of weeks' time, once we've got some new development in Tshwane, we can maybe have you on again and discuss the new situation then.
Yeah, there's certainly lots of new developments to come. But hang on, I thought the Western Cape was exempt from higher levels of load shedding.
Only parts of Cape Town,
Well,
not even all of Cape
true
Town.
Yet.
Is it only the green leafy suburbs?
Only parts of Cape Town not on the city grid are occasionally allowed a stage or two lower than the rest of the country, but it's not as great as it's made out to by the DA. And it's not even the DA. It's not even the DA who can be accredited for that. I mean, the dam that powers Cape Town was built in the 1970s.
I see. I just assumed
that's a pump storage station. So it's a pump storage station, so it doesn't generate electricity. It's just a nice buffer that allows you to basically run electricity when the grid's down. But I don't have any info into which areas get the breaks.
I think it might be the areas that surround Jordan Hill Lewis's house, but that's just an assumption from my side. But gentlemen, it has been fun. I must depart, but have me on again, and we'll have a nice discussion. Thank you.
Hopefully, I will be better prepared, and my lithium battery will be ready and everything. But we shall see.
Cheerio.
Bye.
All right, cheerio, Mark.
So, Rob, you
All
also
right.
wanted to speak about the taxi situation in George. What's been going on
Yes.
there?
Well, let me just sort of pull up my little list of notes over here, because I found a few things over here. So it turns out that the new fella in charge of transport, although Alan Winde has decided to name the Department of Mobility, which sounds like it's about, handing out scooters to crippled people, not running the bus services. But basically, oh, come on, you little thing.
New
Okay.
Provincial Minister for Mobility is Ricardo Mackenzie, isn't it?
That's right. Okay, my signal is about to duck. So 1, 2, 3. Where is it over here? Yes. So one of the things that happened is we had he reached an agreement with Santaco, one of the big taxi cartels, and then day a member of Unkedo Taxi Association was shot dead outside of his home, and this sort of little battle with the taxi cartels in George has been pretty serious. So I mean, like, everyone knows the usual sort of deal. The taxi cartels, A, don't pay taxes. Number two, if they get arrested for some infraction, they all bust out their comrade from jail. And they're pretty much a law unto themselves. But in George, they've been wanting to install public transport similar to the My City buses. And with this coming up, recognizing the competition and trying to get ahead of the curve,
Oh dear, I think we've completely lost Rob now. Rob and I are on the same load shedding schedule, so the power should be coming on hopefully at 8 o'clock. Usually it's now half an hour later than that, but hopefully we can reconnect him quite quickly. If there are any questions that anyone wants to ask, please do put them in the side chat, and then maybe I can try and answer them while we're waiting for Rob to come back to us. Look, I'm not sure if we can actually get Rob to rejoin us, so I think I'll have to bring an end to the show myself here. I mean, this is the challenges, obviously, that stage 5 load shedding brings, and no doubt in the coming months, as the situation deteriorates further, despite the cabinet reshuffle, I'm sure it's not going to change anything. I'm sure we're going to continue to see the rapid decline of our Eskom's capabilities. But please, hopefully next week we'll have a better show. There won't be as much load shedding. Maybe we'll be able to contend with it better. But remember to share the link to this episode. I know there were many technical issues. And please join us next week, same time, for another show of Going South here on Marabane. Good evening, everyone.